Well, hello and welcome to a very, very special, I know I say this all the time, but a very, very special association transformation. Elisa Pratt, Chief Strategist and CEO of BrewerPrattSolutions, coming to you solo today. I'm sad to say Andrew is not with us, but maybe it's why I can take on a special topic that he may not have the stomach for. Let's just put it that way. But I do have a special guest. It's a little heartbreaking, but I'm so excited to finally introduce to the association transformation world a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of working with at BrewerPrattSolutions now for what, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Been a while, right?
Yeah.
So applause and an appreciation for Robert Plante. I know we go by Bo, but your official name, Robert Plante. And for several years, you served as a strategic analyst with me at BrewerPrattSolutions. You were our first intern.
I know. It was an exciting time. It was an exciting time to be a part of things.
What were you thinking?
Well, yeah, I think if you remember, that was right when I was in the middle. My background is in the military, and that's when I was in the middle of transitioning from, the Marine Corps to the Army, which was an interesting jump in of itself.
That's
And
a
I
whole
think
different episode.
that's a whole
So
different
what were
topic.
you thinking? That was a whole different episode. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that I started to recognize the need to start building out my skill set outside of military service. And I believe we sat in on a panel that was hosted for associations that you were speaking at. I remember being impressed by what you said and reached out,
Oh,
made contact. Yeah, absolutely.
there you
Um,
go.
and reached out, made contact, and I just thought that despite whatever I wasn't really sure what I was walking into, but I knew it was going to
You
be an
had
interesting.
no idea what you were in for.
No idea at all, but I knew it was going to be an interesting experience, and it was going to be in an area that I knew very little about. And I think that it provided me the growth that I really needed. So it was exciting, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and you and I both have a passion for military and veterans focused nonprofits.
Mhm.
I'm married to a Marine. You have your military background, and I think that gave us a common denominator. And I had the chance to plug you in on several projects, both as it related to research, strategic planning, and we found kind of a new language. And I didn't realize how parallel it was to what you were being taught in in the military context, but this strategic approach to, I don't know, to strategy, that sounds terrible.
Yeah, strategic visioning.
The strategic vision, but there's a defined military strategy, and that means something. There's ways then to approach it. And you and I talked a little bit about that in some of your latter projects, because you've now graduated. You've
Mm.
graduated from BrewerPrattSolutions. So I guess congratulations, you survived maybe the most difficult deployment of your life. And you are for profit, you're almost civilian, you're out making grown-up money, having family and all those fun things. But the military strategy is something we never really got to outline and define. I think you applied it
Sure.
in context, but I was hoping you could share with the association transformation audience the opportunity to apply military strategy in a nonprofit and association context. What does it even mean?
Sure. So I think that, in those early days when I first came on, just watching you interact with the leadership at various nonprofits and associations, the first thing I'll say is one major correlation I noticed was the dedication that your usual nonprofit or association staff has for what they do. I mean, usually they're working there. Because they care deeply about that topic, or they care about being value added to whatever industry that they're serving. And I think that that is very similar to the military. You usually find, especially with the all volunteer force, people that are very dedicated to their service. So that part was surprisingly easy for me to connect with a lot of the individuals we work with on. What I did see in regards to the planning was when we worked with a lot of these organizations, they're very focused on the strategic visioning. Usually we were brought on and you had me working alongside you on their, 5-year strategic plan. And I think a lot of association nonprofits have done that, iteratively, 20, 30 times in their existence at this point. But I think what I saw is that when it comes to military planning, there's 3 levels. There's strategic, then there's operational, and there's tactical. And I think where we've where I saw that value could be added was nonprofits had the strategic level done, that high level, what is our big picture? What's our big end goal? But as they started to drop down to strategic, maybe some of those bridge crossing goals, like, okay, we want to increase membership over a 3-year span. And then the tactical, what is we actually adding to the membership? We started to lose the focus of how to actually bridge the gap from our starting point to our end point at the strategic level. And I think that's something that we worked on successfully with a number of organizations, but that was really the core of military planning that I think can be brought over is, looking at that strategic that everyone's comfortable with and that reaching out for that long-term end state, but then really breaking down at the operational and then the tactical level, those small battles. What small battles do we need to link together in order to achieve that big end state?
So in the military context, this is how you guys talk too. This is how you're deploying assets. This is how you're prioritizing and determining what has to happen first in order to lead to that greater goal. What is this something you only talk about in high level at times of war, or is this something that's woven into all military interaction and functionality and operations?
No, it's an everyday thing, right? Because the way that the military plans is really just a decision-making process that any organization can utilize. If you look at the Army's military decision-making process, it's a 7-step process that starts with, receipt of mission, or in nonprofits, establishment of an end state, right? Or strategic visioning is done. The next step is mission analysis, which means looking at the terrain both internally and externally. So for a nonprofit that's conducting a SWOT and maybe a competitive field analysis, which I know you and I did plenty of those.
We've done many of those, yes.
Yeah. And getting a feel for both, not only the external environment, but also internally taking an honest look at yourself. Where are we strong? Where are we not strong? Because those two together can then begin to form the next step, which is, course of action development, then course of action refinement, and eventually decision, and then refining that decision. So it's a very logical way that the Army approaches planning that any organization can do as well. And I think that it really, when you put it into a logical process and you apply it even to daily tasks, that you understanding how those daily tasks add up to the longer term goals, it helps you become a more efficient organization and serve your member base more effectively.
Well, and I think you've used a word that we don't often see in the nonprofit environment or at the association board table, and that's logic. In many of our engagements, that was part of the challenge. You can lay a decision-making tree out in front of any group. You can tell them the steps they need to take. It is all logical, but it's implementation, it's culture, it's personality, it's timing. It's capacity and lack of deployable resources.
Sure.
So, we both talk in these idealistic terms, I think. And I wonder, in your experience or just in the teachings of the military, how did they deal with the illogical?
Sure. I think that you're going to see illogical actions, or what you feel from your perception is illogical in any organization you're part of. And I think that, in my opinion, the best way to overcome that is to better understand what in the military will call the ground truth. And I think that's probably a term that a lot of that rings true. Or
wait a minute, what was that?
The ground truth.
The ground truth. So this is like your starting seed of fact.
This is the what is actually, when you're at a leadership position in any organization, you're a little bit higher than the individuals who may be executing whatever the daily tasks are on the ground. And sometimes that gap can cause you to have a different perception of the organization than you realize. This happens in the military all the time, with officers in the tent in the rear, while the enlisted individuals are in the foxhole doing the fighting up front, right? Those two individuals have a different view of the battlefield, or in this case, the industry in the nonprofit world. And I think it's really important to overcome the illogic that can occur in some of these strategic visioning or planning sessions or long-term focusing, for the leadership to really go down, talk to the membership, talk to the daily staff, talk to the secretaries and the assistants and those who are out there engaging with the member base or the industry base to really get a better feel, going back to that mission analysis, get a better feel for how the organization operates internally, what the external feel looks like, because you can't make a decision without understanding that ground truth, so to speak.
Well, when we talk about the language that's used, what's interesting and maybe ironic is the use of the term mission. And I think really there is such a comparable between the military use of that word and the nonprofit world. Why are we here? What are we trying to achieve? What is our purpose? And I don't know. I like to think as though that there's a correlation there, and that makes it even more applicable that we can apply some of these things. In your experience, what is the biggest hurdle in military decision making? I know what I think the nonprofit hurdles are, but what maybe we can find more lessons to learn from.
Sure. I think that the biggest hurdle that I've seen commanders make, that I've made, is that when you do receive that mission and you need to execute whatever your piece of the pie is, or if you're the overall unit, execute the whole mission, is the urge to try and accomplish everything at the same time.
And how did you know that's what I was going to say about associations?
Oh, because I work side by side with you.
That's right.
We're one and the same at this point. No, but I think that one of the most interesting lessons that I learned when I was my background is from the Army Special Forces most recently, and when I was going through that training, is they harped a lot on the Pareto Principle, which is figure out what 20% what 20% of causes are, what 20% of actions can affect 80% of the causes, or move towards 80% of that end state we're looking for. Because if you try to spread your field of view, if you're doing strategic visioning and you want to cover everything, you're going to be spread too thin. You're going to have impacts nowhere. But if you figure out what are the 20% of most impactful things we can do and really drive down on those, you're going to see a larger impact over the long term for your organization. And that's true for the military, and I think for-profit and nonprofit.
Well, you and have always been such a wealth of knowledge. I mean, we joke around and have had a great working relationship, but you're no joke. Like, you're pretty serious dude. I mean, Special Forces, I don't know what rank you're retiring with, but like you're serious. You're a real.
It's classified.
Oh, it's classified. Sorry. No. But we truly thank you not only for your service to the country, but to BrewerPrattSolutions, and are excited about your next step. I mean, I think a lot of this is applicable in your new world. I mean, I don't want to take any credit for this, but you are now Director of Transformation and Restructuring. If that title doesn't mean, you are a graduate of BrewerPrattSolutions and the Association Transformation family, I don't know what is, but that's pretty exciting. What does that mean, and what nonprofit lessons do you get to apply in that new role?
Yeah, so first off, you absolutely own a piece of that credit. So I credit to you and BrewerPrattSolutions, one of the best organizations in the nonprofit sphere, if you ask my opinion. But no, the new role is exciting. I've taken over as Director of Transformation Restructuring at the Swaney Group out of Tampa, Florida. Paul Swaney is a highly intelligent individual, has been in the consulting world, predominantly industrial manufacturing, for a long time. And that's kind of where we're focused at. And I think what has been interesting is the military playing everything we just discussed, my background, the leadership, and most importantly, the people skills that the military taught me, combined with the experience I got working with nonprofits and, working through transformation, strategic visioning, how that translates down to value added for the membership on a day-to-day basis. I've found to be exactly the same in the for-profit industry. Organizations are people-centric, whether they're working on behalf of a cause or working on behalf of, their margins. And I think that means that the problems tend to be the same. So when I'm talking about transformation and restructuring an organization that maybe not is performing up to par, I approach it the same way we approach these nonprofits. We start looking internally. What are our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? What does the competitive field looks like, which can be a bit more brutal in the for-profit world? And then once we have an honest opinion of ourselves, what can we do to help this organization? What are the courses of action they can take in order to begin to improve? And it's the same thing we did in the nonprofit sphere. So there's actually, I think that a lot of times you see these organizations or nonprofit and for-profits there tends to be a divide. I think there actually is a lot of similarity and maybe some lessons that can be learned across both aisles.
That's great. Well, we talk about mission and purpose and not trying to do everything at the same time. And I wonder, in this new role, consulting in a for-profit environment, how you all are going to help your clients through implementation. Because as you recall, in strategic planning, it was always a very important element of strategic planning for BrewerPrattSolutions clients, that we focused on the implementation steps, the after. The
Right.
planning itself is not the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what that looks like for you all now.
Yeah, so I think that it's interesting. The hardest part of, especially on the consultant side for implementation, is to teach someone how to admit that they may not be operating efficiently or may be wrong, right? And that's always a difficult thing to do. And I think you can show someone how to identify when maybe they're not operating efficiently by showing them a proper planning process, walking them through the steps, kind of being a teacher, so to speak, of those initially, especially if, you can do that during the strategic level and give them those tools for implementation. I think the second part is uh, a lot of times the implementation can be over a period of time. And like I said, kind of going back to the beginning of the podcast, you need to understand, you need to teach people that it's not just going to be, we've set a strategic end state and in 5 years we're going to be there. We need to understand now, break that down and back plan it off of 5 years. What are the key performance indicators year over year? What are the monthly indicators that we're going to be looking for, and what are we doing to achieve those? It needs to be broken down all the way to that level.
Well, and maybe one term in the military strategic context that resonated with me was corrective action. If something's not going as planned, and we know strategic plans are living documents, we have to be nimble, we have to be able to adapt. The world is changing with too much speed and intensity. And I assume that's the same on the military side, that you have to be able to execute a corrective action to adjust.
Sure. And I think that's the third part of it, right? It's the old movie adage that actually is, said more than you think in the military, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And I think that, at least in my experience, has proven true both in business and, the times when I was overseas on behalf of the United States. It absolutely is true. And I think you need to as a consultant, you need to teach your client how to be reactive, or even in any leadership position, you need to understand how to be reactive and be able to not only predict, but respond to these situations correctly. And that starts with an understanding of your environment. I think the first special operations principle is understand your operational environment. That's number one in every special operation operator's mind. Because you can't react if you don't understand your environment. So it starts with that analysis, that internal, external. And once you understand where you're at, where you stand, what your strengths and weaknesses are, when those uncertainties do hit, you can do that corrective action. You can respond appropriately. You can react and be more responsive.
Do you defer to special operations and military quotes? I think to Mike Tyson, who said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, I like that one too. That one's a good one.
Well, Bo, I'm so excited that you have, obviously, so many limitless transferable skills, and that at BrewerPrattSolutions, we just had a chance to work with you and see you make this transition to your next chapter. Thank you so much for all you brought to BrewerPrattSolutions, to our clients, to me, to your service to the Army, to the Marine Corps, to this country. We're just so excited to see where you take it, and are glad that there's a little association, voice in your head that lets you think back to nonprofits and the world of 501c3 and 501c6. We're just glad we had you for even just a few years on your larger journey.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. It really means a lot. And, I'll always be a Brewer Pratter at heart. it really, it gave me, it helped me train to my time at Brewer Pratt and working with 501c3 and 6, really gave me the ability to adapt my tool set to be successful with where I'm at now. And, I'm still learning. I'll always be learning, but it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and it definitely set me up for success. And I'll always follow the Association Transformation podcast. I'll always be number one fan. So.
Well, and this wasn't just a reunion. I think there is some great takeaways. I mean, I've been jotting down notes throughout. I mean, between the 7 steps, to military decision making and the Pareto principles. I mean, there's a lot here that I think made you successful, and that I think any of our listeners and any associations and nonprofits could apply to give credibility to some of the approaches they want to take to strategic thinking, to strategic planning or visioning, and some tried and tested ways to ensure your best chance at achieving your mission. Absolutely. So, this was great for us to catch up. I just don't want everyone to think this was just some lug fest. We actually really did, I think, have some interesting takeaways, and I'll share all those in the show notes as well. And you're always welcome back. There's always a place for you if Swaney Group isn't good enough to you, or you just get bored and need to do something on the weekends. Let me know. We'd be happy to have you anytime. And Bo, thank you again so much. We're really excited for your future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was awesome being here.
So Association Transformation, I will post some links in the show notes so you can follow along on several of the pieces of knowledge that were dropped in this episode. And we hope you'll make Association Transformation one of your favorites wherever you get your podcasts. And if BrewerPrattSolutions can help you in your strategic planning or any of the strategic visioning initiatives you and your organization are working on, let us know. And until next time, put your members and your mission first.